Okay. Now the mic.
Check on Twitter and see if it's working. Check the Bitcoin Simply account.
Yeah. Thankfully, I have logins to all of these.
Like it should just pop up as like a new tweet on the Bitcoin Simply account.
Yeah, I'm going to it.
Okay. Yeah, you want to know how hard I'm stacking sats? Is like basically you hand the baseball association a $50 check at the beginning of the season.
Oh, look, we're live. That's great.
Volunteer, they cash your check. So
cash it.
You know, obviously, I'm volunteering as a fry cook tonight to stack $50 worth of sats.
Oh, look at you!
Nice.
All humble, and I was actually gonna say humble and proud, but pride is contradictory. Anyway,
stay humble.
Stay humble. So Corey, I think that the show's starting right now, so you're live. Maybe if they can hear you, but we're gonna let you go. So have fun fry cooking and being humble.
Oh
and,
yeah. It's the life of being a parent, man. You guys are parents, you'll love it.
Well, okay.
But
anyway,
I look forward to checking up on this conversation later.
Cool. Will do. All right. Bye. Well, we're rolling. We are live.
Do we have an audience?
Probably. I don't know.
Okay.
You have Twitter. You can find out, right?
How do I find out?
You just go to the Twitter account.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my hair is very wet. There's actually a lot. There's a lot more long-haired.
Really high tech. I like.
Isn't it?
I like this repurposing of because you saved on equipment to stack more sats, right?
No, I'm just poor. So
all the Bitcoiners are now, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well,
if that's the case, then they can't buy the dip then, which is even more sad.
Well, yeah. I mean,
try to speak into the thing. This is the diaphragm.
Okay. All right.
So,
you do your thing.
I'm doing my thing. This is my thing, people.
Yeah.
Welcome to the first live stream of A Boy Named Sue. That's Mr. Sue to you, aka Phil Gibson. You're truly here, streaming live from the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast network, where we say the quiet parts out loud and we cut the bullshit. And we just right now today, this episode is just very chill, laid back, as you may know if you listen to my show and how I like to do the thing and just have guests and get to know them. I have a Mr. Alex Kaufman passing by. Happened to be in Austin, and I wasn't supposed to say that, was I?
No, we are in Austin. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I
guess
I am passing by.
technically Round Rock. I don't know. I tried to not. I'm trying to follow.
Undisclosed.
Follow the. This is what you can't say, so don't get doxxed. So I was trying to not break that.
No, I think I'm past that in terms of
Cool.
my face.
Your face.
Being out there.
Yeah.
It's all good.
But yeah, dude. So we met on Twitter, like most Bitcoiners do.
Yeah,
and
I mean that's a crazy thing, right?
No, it's pretty.
I guess it's pretty normal now.
Becoming second nature. My phone is kind of like a third limb. Well,
I know. It starts to
hold on. No, third, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth limb, if you will. It's just like second nature.
Cyborg.
Yeah.
Nice.
I wonder how many people got the sixth limb joke. I hope they did.
I still haven't gotten it.
It's okay. It'll come to you later. Keyword come. So, but yeah, like this is really pretty sweet. You're very poised in the way you carry yourself when I listen to you on Spaces, and just a very calm, cool, collected fellow. And now I get to hear if you're just full of shit in that regard. If not, you're probably full of shit. But yeah, dude, like this is what I do on the show. I just kick it, take it easy, and I like to just learn, who is Alex. I hear this guy talk, and he has a lot of things to say, but like who's the man behind the screen?
It's to yell at Twitter Spaces or yell at a rock in the backyard. I mean, those are my only two choices.
Yeah.
There are actual people to listen to my rants.
Yeah.
No, it's nice of you to say that because I hadn't been on Twitter Spaces for a while, and I got on another one of those TradFi spaces with some bond traders that I've gotten to know, and they made me angry, and I was just like, and then someone called dinner, and I was just like, you know,
I feel like I might have been in that room.
I signed off by saying, fuck the dual mandate, the Fed, and I got to go anyway, and I just hung up.
Yeah.
So
is that today?
Yeah, so I can be an asshole.
What was that today?
No, that was a few days ago.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, cool, man. Spill it.
I'm going out of my way to.
No, you're just honest.
Yeah.
You don't have time
it's
for
frustrating.
bullshit.
It's just frustrating stuff because, and one of the things I really wanted to talk about with you was sort of bubble and bust cycles, because I feel like every Bitcoiner I encounter on Twitter Spaces has a different mindset around that, and it's especially relevant right now when
Keep talking.
What are you
stretching?
okay,
Get my drink here.
I should stretch.
Pretend
too.
this camera isn't there.
The camera's definitely there.
I had to hold off my stretching and my film rolling.
Yeah, I probably need a phone roll.
So
My neck's all messed up.
It was the best. It was the best $60 fiat purchase I've ever made. I will say that. So yeah, man.
I think you're getting a huge ROI on this trash can. Or are they not supposed to know it's a trash can?
No, it is a trash can.
Okay. Yeah,
we are plebs.
I
Actually,
know,
I don't like the word pleb or the moniker pleb. It's just it's too overused. It's just
is it overused?
I think.
Yeah,
just,
I mean it's a culture thing. I just have to, when in Rome, I have to say pleb because that's what everyone says.
I guess I just don't like the over self-deprecation.
Well, so I went and looked it up, and apparently that was kind of the upper middle class in Rome, was the plebeian class, and they kind of did this thing where they would all stop working if they were annoyed with the elites or the people who were running the show. And so they had quite a bit of political pull, the plebs did, the plebeians in Rome, in ancient Rome. It wasn't referring to like poverty or something.
Then why did it get that connotation?
I don't know. I think
like,
it
I'm
makes
not
more
crazy.
sense. I think it makes more sense as sort of like upper middle class.
I'm not crazy that people just had the assumption that
there was a little bit of a collectivist vibe to it when I looked up Wikipedia, like that they all kind of got together. Maybe the first like unionizing and striking.
Yeah, but I'm not crazy when I had the assumption that like the plebs, however you pronounce it, that's like derogatory, like just poor people, right? That's what
I
people
feel like
collectively
there are other words for that are like serfs or something, like, you know,
right,
that are even worse. But I think pleb is sort of a little bit higher than that.
Oh,
maybe. I mean, I would want it to be, because you don't want to.
Well, no, yeah, but
with like, oh, well, I'm just a poor person or something. But
no, yeah, but I mean, like
we're inventing a new money. We shouldn't be poor. In fact, if you look at the chart, nobody. Like,
yeah, no,
I'm doing pretty good.
I'm talking Bitcoin aside. People just assume pleb means
chart.
like you're as if you're a serf. So there must have been some Mandela effects kind of thing that happened, because this is changing my perspective on not liking pleb, because I think I like pleb now that I know.
Well, we can bring up the Wikipedia.
That I know the etymology.
Yeah,
cool.
I think it's I think it's from the plebeian class in the Roman times and all that jazz.
Has there been a Bitcoin article written about this? If there hasn't, someone needs to.
Yeah, somebody should. Yeah, I wasn't sure about it at first either. Everyone was saying pleb, but you know, I think that the interesting thing about Twitter Spaces, especially, is just that it's just so random. I remember the very first time I was kind of a little bit starstruck on a Twitter Space was with I had been listening a whole bunch of times and heard the whole story about Tonga being the next country to do Bitcoin, and then Lord Fusatua was always going to be on, you know, the Twitter Spaces.
You got starstruck?
No, well, just I had basically never spoken on a Twitter Space. This was before I had ever started ranting on Twitter Spaces, and so I was like telling my wife, I was like, I can just hit request and I can be talking to these people that
Yeah.
sound like they know stuff about
They
stuff.
sound like they know
Yeah,
stuff.
I don't know. I was like, I actually got to ask a question to Max Kaiser on a Twitter because of a Twitter space. And that was the second time where I was like, I am not worthy.
I met him in person. He
Did
was
you
wearing
really?
short shorts. Yeah.
He was wearing short shorts.
He was.
Oh, the ones with the Bitcoin logo on them.
No, they were just black. He was wearing black in the corner because it was at the Fuck Elon tour.
Oh.
And so it was like before
I feel
that.
like I saw a picture from that.
Yeah. Like there's a meme that he has like great legs or something. But I don't think I get starstruck on Twitter Spaces. In fact, the first time I was on Clubhouse were in the early days, because that's where I think most people started in like talking on the internet in public. It was like that shift from Clubhouse to Spaces. But
right.
So
well, Twitter did the classic thing to just do a knockoff
and better
Clubhouse.
Fuck Clubhouse. But
didn't they try to buy them and then they didn't?
Yeah,
they didn't get bought out. So they just
damn. But the first, I guess, like big person room I was in was Tim Dillon's, and I didn't know who Tim Dillon was. And so, but like a bunch of like Bitcoiners were in there because like Tim Dillon made a thing about him moving to Austin or whatever. So some people from like the Unchained Capital and just like a bunch of Bitcoiners were listening to him shoot the shit. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but I requested up and he actually like pulled me up. And I was completely oblivious, like, dude, who are you? Then I'm starting to get the idea, like, oh, this guy must like know like Joe Rogan or something, but like fuck it. And
I do try to check how many followers people have.
Well, I mean, this is
get some sense of
I think
who they are.
I think this is again when he was like new on there, so maybe he didn't have a bunch. I don't know. But anyway, he like made fun of me. I don't think he made fun of me, but apparently he tried to like roast me or something, and I was just like unfazed. And nice. I think it helps that I wasn't starstruck because I didn't know who the fuck he was. And then someone was like, dude, you know who that was, right? I was like, no, like, what, is he like an actor or something? It's like, no, he's got like the biggest, like one of the biggest comedy podcasts. I'm like, oh. I think I made a joke about his mom or parents, which if you listen to the Tim Dillon show, apparently he has like his mom is literally in like a psychiatric place. She's like not house crazy. So I think I dissed his parents or something, and people were just like, dude, do you not know who that is? Like, no, I don't fucking care. Like, this is the town square like Elon's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And,
so and it's super cool because
the random person on Twitter effect is
like
all you get. That's
like,
all you get.
Like Cynthia Lummis's first mate. I forget his name, but he's super cool, and maybe I think you might have even been in this space. Whatever the fuck you called no, not her husband, like guy, not campaign manager, but just like really close, helping run the campaign. Yeah, just second command or whatever. He was talking about because he's also from where the fuck she is, not Montana. Where's she from?
I thought it was Montana.
Okay, let's just pretend. Yeah, Wyoming. That's it. So like they're both from Wyoming, and he was talking about how their sovereign wealth fund works, because I thought that was really interesting. And but just to be able to actually speak to politicians, just like face to face, I mean, this really levels out the playing field.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how we got to talking about that, but
yeah, well, that was just Twitter Spaces experiences that I had. I was feeling like that's pretty revolutionary for sure. I mean, I've listened to your podcast. I think you are way more technical in Bitcoin than I am, or your guests are at least.
Yeah,
that's
the
last
thing.
One on.
I had them on to make me look good.
Stuff. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to be one of those. I am much more just.
No, dude. This is all. We're just sitting shooting shit, bullshitting. Tell me about you. Well, who is Alex?
Who is Alex? Is this thing on?
It should be supposed to be.
Yeah, I am. I'm just a random shit poster on Twitter, really.
Cool. How'd you get into Bitcoin?
Bought some.
But
that's the thing, right? Is that I only just recently even set up a full node. and it's because of Twitter Spaces and because of Bitcoin Twitter. And
Yeah.
so you get into it and you think, wait a second, okay, it makes sense why the hype and why the narrative is what it is in part, right? And so you want to separate, I come at kind of all of this econ commentary from a perspective of my dad's multi-decades years of research that he did on bubble and bust cycles. And so he put that into his own kind of analytics package and thing that he does at Parallax Financial Research.
Oh, okay.
And so,
so he runs that, like he's been running.
Yeah, it's a little company. No, it's just a little research firm, right? So I think maybe doesn't Lynn Alden do something similar where all she does is research? Yeah, newsletter type stuff. Yeah, when he started out, it was financial newsletter type clients who would republish some of his stuff. Yeah. Right.
And just to stop you here, because I like to just kind of do the hero's journey, like mini bio of my guest. So you've been libertarian for a while, and did you get it from your dad? Like, was he like, what's that like?
I mean, in terms of calling myself formally a libertarian, that's really just 2016, where I was like really upset with the Republican Party for nominating Trump. Let's just say it. I mean, I just thought that was stupid. But then I realized, we're on this trajectory where insurgent parties like the LP and like, say, the Green Party or something absolutely deserve a seat at the table because people are fed up with the two major parties. So that's sort of my other little thing on Twitter that I do in the context of trying to find news and meet new people and just put myself out there. So, and the other thing is that my wife and I both work for
I'm listening. I'm retweeting, showing the show.
Okay, cool. But my wife and I both work for an awesome company called Martian Craft. That's an iPhone app consultancy. And so she has a pretty long career that of gigs and things doing iPhone app development. She's the brilliant technical coder, and I'm more of the social media marketing side and trying to do whatever sales and marketing and all that
this
jazz.
Isn't y'all's company, is it?
No, but we had kind of a consulting company that was just a his and hers consulting company out of college, and that rolled into her being able to work with Martian Craft at some point. And then right before the pandemic started, I was going to be bolted onto their sales team and doing some stuff like that, and then no travel, right? So I was going to be doing some amount of travel for just, I don't know, going to tech conferences and meeting people, getting out of the house, and we were working remote already. And so when the pandemic started, it shut down travel, and I was just like, okay, well, I'll just get on Twitter. I'm going to meet people, because when you want to have those kind of high level conversations, a lot of times you go out to eat, or you go and you find some commonality, so a common interest in econ or in Bitcoin or whatever it is, or in politics, and then you talk business. And so I was like, well, why don't I just get on Twitter and just kind of authentically talk about the stuff I'm interested in, and then see who I meet. And that's been a fun journey because as it turns out, if you really compulsively, I used to write these social media strategy documents. So I was like, well, in the situation I'm in, I'm already a news junkie. Why don't I just aggressively retweet a fixed number of accounts and just pick a cool number, which is my 4444 on my personal Twitter. And so anytime I follow somebody, I unfollow somebody else and just have a fixed number. So if somebody gets followed by me on Twitter, just know that I had to delete somebody else, scroll through my feed and delete somebody that I didn't want to.
Oh, you're trying to clear your timeline and just funnel out the noise and.
Well, I use blocking for that. Which is good. I mean,
you're a power blocker.
Yeah, I've got hundreds of things blocked. And the reason for that is that the whole approach that I started taking on my personal Twitter was to so aggressively retweet everything that I thought was relevant. I have 167,000 tweets now or something. And it's because I would just sit there and OCD just, hit the retweet button on tons of different things. And that's not to say that I didn't want to retweet that, but it was more that if someone's going to mute retweets for me, that's fine. But if they want to then go back to my profile and scroll through or think, well, this is interesting that he found this interesting or whatever, I'm going to DM him. So I've met some interesting people, and Twitter Spaces helped a lot because being able to go audio and just mouth off, sky's the limit there once you have a few beers and start ranting about Bitcoin.
I've only been drunk on Spaces once, believe it or not.
Well, I think
doesn't stop me from sounding drunk.
I think I've got you beat there. Getting drunk on Spaces is sort of like, what space is this for?
Yeah,
we should be drinking right now. I'm just kidding. No, it's all good.
There's vodka in it.
Yeah, no,
not really. There's not at all.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so new to the concept of vodka soda.
Oh, okay.
Big fan.
Oh, is there really vodka?
No, there's not. I'm just speaking in general because we're talking about
it can be good.
What's your favorite booze? Are you a vodka guy, whatever guy, beer guy, wine guy?
It depends. I like IPAs for sure.
Okay.
And
very hipstery from where you're from.
Yeah,
I can assume.
I guess that's cliche at this point.
I'm just kidding.
Like
I mean, you're in Austin now, so I mean,
yeah.
I never been.
Well, I grew up in the Seattle area, and like I said, my dad was super into. He's a trained geophysicist, but he was super into mathematical modeling, and so he wanted to repurpose that, decades ago when he started his own research firm into forecasting markets. And so that became a really successful, long-term viable, business for him, with clients back on the East Coast and clients now that we get through Bloomberg. And that forecasting,
what is it called again?
Parallax Financial Research. And so the word parallax,
Robert Breedlove part of that?
Oh, I don't know. No, I do know. No, he definitely wasn't part of. I don't know if he used the name Parallax at some point.
I think his thing was Parallax Digital.
Right. So it's a reused word. It's just a word that means,
Yes.
frame shift, which is great for many things. So, in terms of shifting your perspective.
Yeah.
But I got more involved when his tools launched on the Bloomberg Terminal third-party app store back in, I think 2013. I got more involved in the family business. So
yeah.
and just getting
consulting. Like, what is your specialty?
Well, more.
Like, what were you trained
being
in?
An annoying spammer. No,
that's a skill.
I actually, one of the clients that we got through Bloomberg was down here in Austin. I actually called him to check in at one point. But the forecasting tools are great for basically any asset. So, I'd ask him about Bitcoin. He has some Peter.
I hope that was recording the entire time, because you would assume live.
It's okay.
Whatever. Fuck it. Hey, we're here. Welcome to A Boy Named Sue. That's Mr. CDU, aka Phil Gibson, with Alex Kaufman. Again, this is a little strange because I didn't hit record, but I saw it when you're live streaming. We're live streaming back.
That was the practice
right now.
session.
That was the practice. Yeah. We talked
it
about
gets serious now.
Booze and parallaxing, but parallaxing, like relaxing. Parallaxing. Parallax, bro.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Man,
it's a good all-purpose word.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Bitcoin is all about the frame shift.
Yes, the
mindset
frame shift. Yeah.
Shift,
Paradigm shift.
Exactly.
Is it paradigm or parallax shift? What's the difference between paradigm and parallax?
I think the way it's used technically, the word parallax is used to describe that thing that happens like in a side scroller video game where the background, in like old Mario, the background and the foreground are moving at a different rate or something. But then the secondary definition would be just any kind of perception shift or frame shift, right?
Cool.
How that they move at different rates.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was
you grew up
passing through Austin and I was like,
was that the first one that
all the Austin Bitcoiners?
Was that the first one on your list, or just the last resort and the first one to respond?
You were the first, Phil. You're the first. Am I good at lying?
That's what I like to hear.
It was nice of you though.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate that because that's no, I actually visiting family here in Texas. So, wanted to.
When are you moving?
When am I moving to Austin?
Yeah. Everybody's leaving
Any
California,
day now.
New York.
Any day now.
Should.
I might not be able to get back, but no, I just think that anytime you actually take it as payment like that's what I was reading, at least, about all the events that were going down. I was super jealous and not make it for what was the last big Bitcoin event in Austin. I feel like that I missed, but I think BitBlock Boom is going to be in Austin the next one around. I really want to go
in
to
August.
that.
Yeah,
that's in August. Yeah, I'd love to come for that.
Should.
Yeah, that sounds
even
really cool.
Even if you don't buy a ticket and get like, hotel, resort, whatever, you can just show up. Not
I can just show up
at the thing.
Just waltz in.
Like,
if I have the shirt, then I get in, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
No, you don't. This
is my favorite Bitcoin shirt.
But what I'm
saying,
saying,
you can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin.
You can.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna do it now.
Yeah. And everybody should.
But you can just show up like at the event, because people are gonna be like in the hallways and probably like the bars next door.
Yeah.
Because I mean, similar to what people did in Miami, so people didn't even buy tickets and they just went because they knew Bitcoiners were gonna be there. It's a good excuse to go to Miami, though.
Good networking.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, yeah, I didn't get out much during the pandemic, so this was my way to connect to people. That's great. Was Twitter Spaces. So, and Clubhouse. I did get an invite to Clubhouse. I just never really used Clubhouse very much. I got on there for a few of the Bitcoin Spaces, but that's about it.
Some people stayed, but I am just like the network effect. Like Twitter Spaces is better.
That's where it's at.
Maybe not.
That's where it's all happening.
I feel like Clubhouse has less tech issues because it's been around longer, but I don't know. Like, people still complain about Spaces, so I haven't like popped into Clubhouse to see what it's like, but people complain more about being dropped from stage and stuff. Like, not because they get kicked off, but because maybe it feels crazy to say that Twitter doesn't have enough servers, so maybe people just haven't
getting overloaded. Yeah, I remember that happening, where it seemed like something on the back end got overloaded and the Spaces just froze up or something.
Yeah. So
or maybe someone said the wrong thing.
I mean, that probably happens,
trigger words.
Yeah. So I don't it's just funny, like Twitter being Twitter, like they don't have the resources and capital to be a better experience than Clubhouse is.
I don't know. Maybe Elon will fix it. What do you think?
Maybe. But then again, Twitter wasn't profitable from the get-go.
I heard he was going to start firing people pretty aggressively.
Nice. You should.
But that there were also a ton of people that were submitting resumes already to work under Elon. They were all excited.
Nice. To
go work for Twitter, because Elon has a huge following, and very talented people who follow him. So
I wonder if he kept the HR team. Just think of like how awful that is going through.
There's no way that HR team's gone.
No.
Like those are the gatekeepers that let in all the people that are anti-free speech. So.
He probably talked to people before he took, like, this is probably months in the making.
Yeah.
Of who he was gonna do what.
I've heard people who still don't believe that the transaction will close. I mean,
when is the deadline?
I don't know the details of how the transaction's going through, but he seems pretty confident that he's already talking about how he's going to fire people. I mean, it's great. You wouldn't be talking about that if you didn't think the transaction was going to close. So or maybe you would. I don't know. Yeah, it's funny stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think that the thing about really Bitcoin right now is behaving like a risk asset for sure. And that's, I think, the thing that credibility wise, we have to just take the bull by the horns and deal with out there on Bitcoin Twitter, as we have to talk about the fact that if your goal in getting Bitcoin is to make lots of US dollars, and that's your only goal, then you better have a really good, I don't know, short-term trading strategy to get in and out, and just let it be that and ignore everything else, because that's
what
nothing.
shitcoins are for.
That has nothing to do with what Bitcoin is, and so, you know, the people that are really hardcore no coiners, like a Peter Schiff or something like that, you know, they justify it by saying that in their mental model there's no fair value, right? If the fair value in their mental model is that it's zero, that's worth nothing, then they could say, well, it's all a bubble. Well, my dad studies bubbles, so I had to dig in, and I was like, well, even if we're going to have a dollar denominated bubble blown, which one's going to survive? Just like with the dot-com bubble, you had eBay, you had Amazon survive and become enormous companies from that. And Bitcoin is there's no way that is not the survivor here. You know, we're going to see everything else just decimated in this bubble bust cycle. And I tweet about how bearish I am pretty regularly, partly because I wanted to warn people.
Bearish on what?
On all risk assets that were in trouble because the central bank, you know, painted itself into a corner. Basically, when you have inflation prints like they've been, you're talking about the actual currency being in question, right? And so at some point, even if they don't want to admit it, their policy has to also defend the dollar. And I think a lot of central banks try not to ever admit that they would look at, you know, the value of their fiat, you know, relative to other fiat.
Well, yeah, that's why they've all been stacking gold for years and accelerating that.
That's one way to do it, for sure. That's I mean, and this notion we have all these euphemisms and words for it, and this notion of Fed jawboning, you know, being a thing where, oh, they're just going to say lots of words and word salad. This is just accepted as something you say about what Fed policy is that, oh, well, they're going to jawbone the markets, or they're going to jawbone the dollar, or whatever it is, right? They're going to come out and they're going to pay lip service to the idea that they're going to get more aggressive or be a little less dovish, and all these sorts of phrases, right? And ultimately, that's another way of sort of almost like Orwellian doublespeak. It's another way of saying, we're not going to tell you what's actually going on. We're going to, and you will accept that we're not going to tell you. We're going to tell you something that you will then accept and describe as something that is not what's going on. And that probably doesn't even make any sense.
No, it does. Like, I mean, whatever politicians or Fed chairs say is political theater to distract from what is actually happening. Mm-hmm. And to that point, what do you actually think is happening?
Well, I think that a lot of what the central dogma of economics has been, and why it became so irrelevant, particularly 08 and 09, when I was graduating with my econ degree, was that, you know, they didn't have, and Nobel Prizes were being given out for behavioral economics and really digging into psychology and why do we have bubbles and busts, and what are the individual economic agents actually doing in the system. And so that was happening alongside, you know, plenty of people just being taught the basic central dogma, lots of nice straight lines and supply and demand curves that are completely based on, you know, assumptions about rational behavior.
Keynesianism.
Well, I mean, Keynesian was, how do we elevate the state in terms of policy making in order to achieve all these other social objectives? Okay, so that was sort of, okay, we need to bring in someone who's kind of radical in order to pull us out of the Great Depression, right? And so that radicalism fed forward into a lot of hand waving and excuse making for really, really bad economic policies with unintended consequences. So as a much more libertarian person. I look at all of this as sort of a manipulation of human behavior, and also, which is never good. You don't want to manipulate people, against their will, using money as this carrot and stick, or regulation as a carrot and stick, when all the nice things we have in civilization are from freedom, giving rise to all sorts of cool, complex things, right? So one of the things that got me more involved in my dad's business, and at the time, after I had my degree, was that he was kind of heterodox to begin with. He was like, well, nobody's going to pay for anything that doesn't work. So he was making models that actually worked, that were actually forecasting, okay, here's where the stock market's going to go based on what actually backtests well, right? Well, why does that particular pattern backtest well? It was this sort of log periodic thing that is nested fractal style in the price series data. It works because we respond to the price emotionally. And so we're sitting and watching charts for things that are freely trading at auction, like Bitcoin. And we're responding emotionally to it in real time. So it goes high, we're happy, we take some profits, and then it goes low because everybody's happy and they took profits. And then they're sad, and then the cycle repeats. And that feedback loop is what causes patterns in the price data. Well, as it turns out, if this graduates all the way up to be a bubble, a massive bubble, where they don't let the normal stuff work itself out.
The everything bubble.
Right. If it graduates up to the level of economic policy making and this well-intentioned central bank behavior, which is just really, really disastrous in the long term, right? Because there's no free lunch, right? This is what Keynesian economists would never want to base their entire approach to econ on. There's no free lunch, because that's the whole thing they're trying to engineer their way around. Is how do we shift costs to maybe other parts of society or to the state or something like that with Keynesian economics. But ultimately, you never escape it. There's always someone who gets hurt from those kinds of policies. So anyway, the point that I wanted to make with bubbles and busts is just that even if we're in a massive crypto bubble right now, which we are, NFTs are the bubble, and I tweet as much, is that what's happening with the dollar and dollar denominated assets being bubbleized, or the everything bubble there, is that it's losing credibility, right? So,
which is why they're tightening.
Well, exactly. Is that what's happening by them causing some pain in risk assets right now by doing what, a 0.5 point raise on top of a 1/4 point raise, is, I think, in their view, giving them back some of that much needed credibility. Like, that's the apex predator of the whole story, is that whether or not the Fed is credible, will they actually turn the screws on everybody and take the punch bowl away from the party? That was sort of the whole point, right? Is that if they aren't willing to do that, we're courting hyperinflation, which, for the record, our true hyperinflation, it would be worse than a depression, a modern Great Depression. Even it would be much worse to go full Weimar Republic.
Yeah.
So
probably doesn't last as long as the Great Depression, though, right?
Well, I think that
it's like a bloop bloop.
Well, no, Venezuela is the modern example, because what happened with the Venezuelan stock market is they just switched it off, right? These things are all digital now. So it went parabolic in Bolivar denominated terms, and then they just turned it off. And everyone's like, wait, where did my stock market account go that I was doing so well in Bolivar terms?
The lever,
and they're like, yeah, we really don't want you to have any assets. I'm sure that was fun for you, but we're switching that off,
I'm sure
and then they
was
start
fun for you,
stockpiling Tide bottles, to store of value down there, right? And they showed pictures, as like, a credit to the gold bugs in Venezuela. They were shaving little bits of gold just at food markets and stuff, because the infrastructure has to exist for Bitcoin to get penetration in terms of mobile phones and cell and towers and all the rest of it. And so if you literally have to get food, and that gold is somewhat still a proxy for money, and you're completely destroyed by a modern hyperinflation, well, that's what you do. You don't bring a stack of useless Bolivar paper notes, to your farmer's market. You bring something that's at least physically small and somewhat verifiable, based on the weight or something like that. So anyway, I mean, to me, it's really interesting because if this is completely a currency story, what's going on with Bitcoin, it all makes so much more sense. That's when the NFTs bugged me so much on Twitter, and the people suddenly getting hexagons for their NFTs. That was just an auto block for me because it's just,
except some people that
just
do
like
it,
the apex of just
some people that do that though are Bitcoiners trolling because they think that they can go into a safe moon room and convert them and save them.
No, because you can't save everyone, right? That's the Bitcoiners say that.
I'm not advocating that.
Yeah,
Brian, watching you. So yeah, if it's not
Brian, oh, you mean Shinobi?
No, he goes by Brain, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I probably fucked up his name just now. Don't care. So if this isn't a currency thing, what else do you think it might be?
Well, it kind of has to be a currency thing. I guess you could make the argument that the companies and when I first really started looking at the kind of stock implications, because I really mostly came at this from the stock market and TradFi. I was like, well, I get the Bitcoin story. This is going to be especially hot with inflation. And so why don't I long some of the mining stocks for Bitcoin miners like Riot Blockchain? And that worked out pretty well as things were going up. So I was sort of using that as a proxy in other accounts for just getting Bitcoin directly. And eventually I got converted to, well, I just need to stack a lot of Bitcoin directly myself rather than speculating in the stock of the company that mines the Bitcoin. But it's got a multiplier, just like a gold mining or a silver mining stock would have a multiplier. And that's healthy. That's good because you want to see that kind of, it's considered a commodity. Yeah. And the central bankers like Christine Lagarde don't want you to say that it's a currency. Yeah. And I think that's super interesting that they are so triggered by that. It was like, methinks that doth protest too much.
Yeah. I mean, the EU completely hates this crowd. I call Davos, as a lot of people do.
Davos crowd, yeah.
Davos consisting of basically the EU, but those are the real true globalists, and there's Davos people in the current administration here, and just WEF, whatever. But they completely hate Bitcoin, and that's why I think they are more friendly to Ethereum. Perhaps they created Ethereum and just propped up Vitalik as their little stage boy, but they can actually it's centralized, or even like Ripple or whatever. But I mean, from what I've heard, the regulations on crypto are a lot more intense in Europe. And there's this opportunity, I think, for the US to actually embrace Bitcoin, whereas over there in the EU, they'll try to use some other centralized crypto assets and have that be their try to, quasi replacement of the IMF CBDC.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were talking about special drawing rights, the SDR, way before, crypto and Bitcoin was sort of the dominant part of that world currency conversation. They're like, oh, well, maybe that'll be the world currency, is whatever they use these SDRs for or something. And, this battle over there being a world currency, it didn't really click in my head, kind of the nature of that whole battle, until I started thinking about the way the gold standard used to function, and why it was a good thing. And so there was this one, I think Steve Forbes partnered with PBS, of all partnerships, to make this. It was an award-winning documentary you can still get for free online at inmoneywetrust.org. And I loved it, and I even mentioned Bitcoin at the end. It's a really good documentary.
When was this?
I don't know. I tweet out that link sometimes in reply threads because it's so great. And the history there, if I'm poorly recapping, is just that when you define, and Steve Forbes himself is basically in the documentary talking about this, when you define money almost like you define, say, a kilogram or something like that as a unit of measure, and you have a equivalence, it perfuses distrust. Trust, not distrust. It perfuses trust out into society globally. And so gold, through the gold standard, was a one world currency.
Yeah.
But it was only that because of that.
Still is to some extent.
Right, to some extent. But what was happening was that as America was ascendant, America's currency of the dollar and our commitment to the gold standard was sort of the momentum behind that being dominant. And then the sort of the catch up that you have to do after you essentially default on that promise during the Vietnam War and all that jazz, is that you have to kind of force people to use dollars. And when
that
you have
exactly what we did.
Yeah. And when you have empire, you can kind of do that. And the British pound, I'm sure, was used much more widely when it was, sun never set on their empire. So, the thing that occurred to me at one point before I got really into Twitter Spaces was that, the metal bugs and the Bitcoiners should be friends and talk about, well, how do you actually take something that's relatively scarce but physical and made of atoms and somehow connect it to this thing that's absolutely scarce and is really useful with the Lightning Network and all the rest for medium of exchange, all of that stuff, and merge them together, and not really merge them in the sense that you ruin either one.
Just put them in a basket.
Well, it's more like
and have that be your SDR.
It's more like this idea that you can only redenominate economies into sats, at least in my head, like down there in El Salvador, they are still dollarized, right? It's a joint currency. Like there used to be this old debate about silver and gold being the bimetallism.
Yes,
used to be this big currency debate in the US. Oh, we should have more silver ratio or whatever it was. But that was a big debate at one time. Well, now what you have in El Salvador is, two things. Yeah. The dollar has to still be, extremely relevant to those folks, because that's probably most of what you see on menus and things, right? Is, it's this many. In fact, I think Max Kaiser even posted a little spot of him, ordering at a restaurant down there in San Salvador, and the menu has dollars. You don't actually have a significant change until you price in sats, because then you have to actually address the volatility issue head on and say, okay, well, what's our volatility premium that we as a little restaurant or food vendor or something have to put if we price in sats? Because we're not going to go back and change it every 5 minutes based on the dollar, Bitcoin cross rate. And so if you have high volatility events like we're in right now too, you have this issue where there needs to be someone to step in, a kind of buyer of last resort, to prop up the price for countries to be able to denominate in sats. And not necessarily to prop up the price. This is all sacrilege, right? To say some of these things, but because you don't want to, as a libertarian, you don't want to encourage the state to go in and manipulate. But at the same time, even if it was all private owners, private Bitcoin whales sort of working together to dampen down the volatility, it would have the same effect. Is that the volatility is what keeps you from getting to unit of account and medium of exchange. And we have to address it, somehow.
Yeah, and hopefully we keep crab walking around this 25K, sub 30K around there thing. So we can give institutions opportunities to buy more Bitcoin. This probably sounds more hopeful than anything, but I would not be surprised if the Fed, Jerome Powell, Wall Street, the 12 regional Fed banks, the commercial banks, all being in cahoots to keep doing what they're doing, raising rates, tightening, and still raising like reverse repo payout rates in overseas repo facilities. Just sending all these signals of like, hey, drop what you have and get dollars. And as they continue to raise rates and to just destroy what demand people have in the stock market, and tell people to wake the fuck up, pull back, let everything sell, and reevaluate, where does my value actually need to be? And I think if they do need to do a bailout or prop up Bitcoin, I mean, right now it's a currency war ultimately between the dollar and the euro. And what I like to say is that, sorry, it's going to be somewhat of a long monologue, but
no, that's all good. I just want to say we're definitely not asking for a bailout, because that was the whole point, right? So bailouts are bad. Right?
Well, not direct bailouts for corporations and stuff like in 2008, but it's really the Fed bailing itself out by buying Bitcoin.
Okay. I think that
because it strengthens
the Fed should go away.
Well,
entirely.
I do too.
I think the U.S. Treasury should stack cold storage Bitcoin in a vault.
They're not going to do that. Treasury's Davos.
Well, no, my point in saying that is that if you see the way Bukele, buys the dip, BTFD, right, and just tweets about it, why isn't the U.S. Treasury Secretary doing that? That's my point, is that we don't need a central bank, just like they don't have a fiat currency in El Salvador. We don't need, to
address that. The central bank, the Fed, is bifurcating with like the rest of the government, because as I mentioned, they are basically just Davos sleeper cells. Like this current administration wants to embarrass and destroyed America as we know it.
Well, that's a whole another rabbit hole.
And this is why Powell is tightening, or the people that put Powell in place made him tighten, because he.
But see, that's the thing. I'm glad he's tightening.
No, I'm too.
Oh, you are.
This is my thesis. Well, this is Tom Longo's thesis.
I mean, it's gonna hurt a lot of people, but
yes, but no,
you have to defend the dollar.
Jerome Powell is my daddy for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
As well as Putin. Not really. Well,
I mean, he's printing money into my put options, whereas I wish I had call options back when things were pumping. But no, I've been just bearish a long time.
So from
you never know when it's gonna.
From what I've heard, basically, your Gary Gensler's and your Janet Yellen's and even your Christine Lagarde's, like, just wrap all that up. Whoever the fuck like runs IMF, Ursula something, they're basically like all Davos and pro EU, and they want to destroy, like, they are shooting themselves economically in the foot in Europe, intentionally, because they need it all to collapse and have the people just bow down to them and say, yes, Lord Klaus Schwab, we want our CBDC from you, because there's no other way. But they want to destroy America first. That way, if the EU crumbles, they don't need to worry about the fear of capital flight into the US, which is what is happening, which is why you had the announcement last week of 50 bips, and then the stock market rallied. I think that was capital flight. Yes, the next day
that was just a dead cat bounce. It kept going lower. So,
yeah, that's why I said it kept going lower after that, because I mean, corporations and zombie companies were like, oh shit, my cheap money isn't cheap anymore.
Yeah.
But this is what Powell is doing. He's raising rates, as you and I will probably agree here. He's raising rates and tightening to say, hey, we're not fucking around, because Europe, you are literally trying to kill us and embarrass us, and we don't want to be under your IMF, BIS like system of monetary control, because that's what we do here in America, because the commercial banks and the Fed member banks are all shareholders of the Fed. And this is how the US banking system maintains its power and control through this, yes, corporate, if you will, but still ironically decentralized system that you fucks across a pond don't have. And we want to maintain our stature and power. And when you are trying to do these build back better bills and stimulate us into oblivion, where we don't actually okay any of this stuff, then we can't be friends. When you pass the CARES Act and actually allow BlackRock the ability to the Fed window, when that is for banks, I mean, this is in the Klaus Schwab's playbook of corporations are going to replace nation states. Powell and the Fed, that is not part of their agenda. And so what this is, it is a fight to preserve the power that the banking cartel in the US has. Because after 2008, the global banking cartel basically broke because of like all the bailouts in Cyprus and whatever.
Right.
But now it's come to a halt. And I think that is why Powell was put in 2018, whenever the hell he came in, he was put in because Wall Street, the banks saw that we can't do this whole global banking cartel thing. Like, there's a bifurcation in the mob. And I think this is what they have been trying to do. And this is their opportunity to be successful. And then one other thing is that LIBOR and the Eurodollar basically had more control over monetary policy than the Fed did, because they were offshore dollars. And so you just have like this yin yang like fighting. And now finally in this year, the Fed is on SOFR, which is
I read about that.
Yeah, which is based on like actual market rate between banks. And whereas that they didn't have that before, and you had 18 banks meeting in London, only one of them representing the interests of the United States, which was JP Morgan.
Yeah.
And they basically said, oh yeah, LIBOR is going to be this. And by the way, we're going to keep printing Eurodollars. And now that we're on SOFR, all of US debt is indexed to that. And there have been other secured debt like indexes and rates that are starting to spring up, which is basically kind of like saying fuck you to LIBOR in a sense. And I think this is actually a spark of hope, because you are actually having people like at the elites, not just in America but elsewhere, that are saying, hey, we actually don't want this whole like EU, World Economic Forum, TWDC kind of life, where the golden billion are going to reign over us in this new era of serfdom. We're not going to have that, because like the Fed is trying to maintain its power, you have people like Greece, just I think yesterday or maybe a week ago, but when Christine Lagarde was trying to pass these policies that, hey, you can't do business with Russia or anyone that ships goods with Russia. And you have Greece stand up and they say, no, look at our geolocation. We have a stronghold. And if we wanted to, we could do a Grexit.
Right.
Because Europe is so dependent on. But anyway, so that just goes back to, you have like these secured overnight rates, I think, that are now becoming like popularized, if you will, because they don't actually want to commit financial suicide and abide by this new world global great reset.
Well, I think, I've read most of the things that feed into all the things you just talked about, in terms of they're openly admitting, hey, we should have a great reset. And oh, doesn't that sound great? Good. And oh, COVID's an opportunity. I'm like, what? That's no good. And then all of the agitation around now Russia and Ukraine. Right. And so the geopolitics are always relevant to financial markets in some way. And I used to binge watch tons of Bloomberg TV, and I still do. Right. But partly because I want to understand the analysis of how they are thinking on Wall Street through
geopolitics,
these sorts of things, right?
You can, I
the
just
cause and effect, right, that they perceive, at least the punditry or whatever, right?
The
But
tail wags
they have
the dog.
money managers on there all the time. Too.
Okay, so this is what I've really been trying to champion in the show recently, and all thanks to Tom Luongo, who I'll send you links and stuff.
Okay.
But completely changed my way of thinking about the Fed, about money, how this is really a battle of Europe versus us or America. But you cannot separate economics from politics, because the tail wags the dog, and they switch positions on who's the tail and who's the dog.
Okay.
And
I'll accept that too.
And there's too much cuckery on Twitter, on just mainstream media, where people won't touch the political side, the geopolitical side, with a 10-foot pole, because maybe whatever hedge fund they're running, they have interests, or they're managing the assets of people that are just running the political status quo. And this is why it's so important to, I think, say the quiet parts out loud to an extent, because people can still get canceled, but at the same time,
that's the only thing we should cancel, is the cancel culture.
Because it's so Ron Paul, like, truth is treason in the empire of lies.
Absolutely.
And when you have finance bros censoring themselves, it's just doing a disservice to the people that are actually listening. And they are probably deliberately censoring themselves, because
of course
they're just going along to get along and keep making more money.
Bearish talk is interesting on financial journalism too, because it's one of the ways that you can tell things have really gotten out of hand, is when you get a sense that you can't have bearish people on the news. If they're talking too much about the negatives and the downside consequences. And I think
they could twist that and make it fear porn, though. Fear porn sells.
That's a whole nother thing, right? But it just
otherwise they would have to do the Alex Jones thing,
right? But just in terms of pumping things or inverting Jim Cramer or something like that. And I found it interesting that there's certain people they won't have on the shows anymore. Like, Peter Schiff doesn't get invites on CNBC anymore, and that's just an anecdote. But
since when?
That's what he said on one of the Twitter spaces. I think it was one of Log's spaces, where it was father and son debating a lot of Bitcoiners. It was a kind of epic space. That was were you in on that?
Yeah, no, I think one of my most like viral tweets, because my tweets aren't viral, but it took off because I said, what did I say? I said, just got yelled at by Peter Schiff. It's the best day ever. Some shit like that.
I enjoyed listening to that, because there were some really good questions asked, and he just, lost his mind type of reaction.
It was a child.
But the thing is that there are a lot of people, and of course he's acting very smug right now. Any downturn in the price, and he gets excited.
Like,
but I have
this
back and forth with my dad.
Everything else is going down right now, Peter. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I have a similar back and forth with my dad about Bitcoin. That I've mentioned this on Spaces, is that he being the architect of a bubble detector is definitely got his alert antennae up very high anytime something moves parabolic, or that there's a lot of hype around it. And so cutting through the hype, I wanted to kind of find my people, and I went straight to the maximalists, because even though I'm sympathetic to metal bugs politically, I went straight to the Bitcoin maxis, because they're the ones who are kind of taking it to their own, the affinity scammers, right? The crypto bros and all the stuff that's been going on, and this crazy NFT stuff. And to me, that's the moral high ground, right? Is in a lot of ways, that's calling it out as what it is, and just saying, look, there are some core elements here that, from Satoshi's, what I would call a discovery, to the point we're at now, really laid bare the fallacy of Keynesian economics. There's a whole bigger picture, right? That you have to understand, what happened after 1971 and the end of the gold standard. So a lot of people just would rather number go up. And so if numbers going up for, I don't know, some weird techno kitty NFT or something, whatever crazy thing people are burning dollars on, it means that they've kind of gotten to you with this inflationism where you starting to get in that mindset as inflation gets hotter and hotter. The average person in America gets in that mindset like, oh, okay, I got my paycheck. I really need to burn it as fast as possible and not really think too much about it, whether that's to get an NFT or whatever it is. It's like they're scared to have just dollars or to be savers of their dollars. And that's a symptom of that runaway freight train starting to take root, right? And so you could either end up with, hey, we're actually going to let risk assets denominated in dollars implode, or you're going to get $300 a gallon milk. Which do you want? Because the structural underpinning of the economy was going to be affected. The reality was going to be affected by COVID, by the pandemic, no matter what anybody did to paper it over. Fiscal and monetary policy does not change people dying from a virus and having everything having to retool everything to deal with it, and everyone getting freaked out by the whole response and the worldwide implications. And we still have crazy Shanghai lockdowns right now happening. I retweeted this guy who was I think one of the few, getting tweets out of a lockdown apartment building, working for some foreign company there. And he was just feeling unencumbered to just say what the situation was. And I was retweeting him as I'm like, this is boots on the ground news from Shanghai of what's going on there. And they were showing pictures too of all the backed up ports, right, going in and out of China right now. So, these things made March 2020 happen in our markets, right? That big move that was dramatic. And at that time, I was a market bear. Even at that time, I've been bearish for way long. And so, I was able to throw a very small amount of money on a put option on a Friday, knowing, as that was happening, that, those crashes happened very fast, and have it 10x by the Monday open, type of thing, because it was moving so fast. And on Sunday afternoon, you'd see, hey, the futures are already limit down on Bloomberg TV. so that kind of thing where, in advance that circuit breakers are getting hit because it's so violent, it's jarring. And I don't know if you remember when oil went negative. Yeah. But, now we're at the point where everyone's complaining that it's way too positive, in terms of the price of energy. So, that's the other thing. In 08 and 09, during that crash, I think people really focused on real estate and discounted the role of energy prices and energy price inflation, because a barrel of oil went super high right before all the wheels came off in 08 and 09. I think it was $150 a barrel. Yeah. I keep seeing charts, and I can't give an exact anecdote, but the parallels of like, this rate was just, I think it was actually like refinancing rates did what they did like before the crash in 08, and just other anecdotes like, well, this happened, but this is happening now, and then this happened before this crash. So right. Yeah. Leading indicators. Right? Yeah. Leading indicators. And then I'm also seeing and hearing people say, oh, no, it's not going to be a recession. It's going to be a downturn. It's going to be a depression. Well, and I think that like it's going to be terrible. And like, I what think the that fuck I get called, being reactionary and everything, because of that kind of extreme level of, what I had a guy, and it's Howard something. Stern. No. There was, I think he's a VC. But Anyway, yeah, a guy on Twitter called me silly for coming on and saying, yeah, I'm forecasting partly because of the magnitude of this mega bubble that our systems detected and everything way back in 2018. It had just gotten so big, even in 2018, that's why when COVID happened and they went even harder and just erased March 2020 forcibly, I was like, this has to be the final inning. Because I thought in March 2020 when it crashed, I thought we were going to go down 90% on the Dow. I thought that was the moment when the wheels were officially coming off, because we were so fragile going into it. I didn't think they had the tools to do what they did, but apparently they did. But they courted a whole nother kind of
I think
disaster.
you're about to make me buy Bitcoin right now.
Right. It all leads to buying Bitcoin.
I am like on the trigger to like load up my Cash App.
Well, because it's really irresponsible. I mean, the best way to describe this type of currency management is horribly irresponsible.
Yeah.
Like that's the way you describe the management of the dollar. And so dollarized countries and people and nation states that have pegged to the dollar, no, this is really irresponsible. What the heck are they doing? I think there are places all over the world that know.
Yeah.
The Saudi Rial is pegged to the dollar and has been, that's sort of the petro-dollar complex.
Which
thing.
they're
It's part of
saying
that, I guess.
Which they're saying no, we're done.
I don't know. Is the unpeg going to happen there or not? Or are they going to manage?
They wouldn't take a call from Biden.
Oh well, that's I think that might be for other reasons. I mean that's politics, but actually, break the peg would be financial news for sure. Maybe it's already.
I mean, people are like turning to Russia,
right?
Which is actually setting like an example the U.S. should take. Maybe not exactly, but they basically force the world on a gold standard or a ruble standard because they are backing the ruble by oil and gold, like commodities, which they can.
I mean, commodities are still important.
Which is strengthening the ruble because they're basically saying, hey, do you want this like world reserve asset, which is oil, arguably? But hold on.
Yeah,
so they're basically saying, like, do you want this? Okay,
mm-hmm.
You can either pay us in rubles or gold,
right?
And so, what's stopping, like during this crab walk? What is stopping the Fed from buying up a shit ton of Bitcoin and doing, I guess, the same? I didn't really think this out in my head before I said it.
It's all good. I do the same thing. I just sort of, because the causality in econ, these are complex systems. So you can have all these daisy chains of causation that are unrelated, right?
Yeah.
And then they intersect.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait, what just happened? Because this kind of confluence of events.
Yeah.
And so, I think the big thing with Bitcoin is really world trade. Is that at this point, what seemed to be happening and what should still happen, and I was so happy to see Bukele tweet that he bought the dip the other day. But don't just leave it up to him and his nation state treasury. I mean, no one country is going to be perfect politically, that's for sure. But lots of these little countries have things to barter with. They have exports, or they have, some amount of reserves or something like that. And they can basically be thinking about it in terms of controlling some portion of the world's future money supply.
You want our bananas? Pay us in Bitcoin.
Exactly. It doesn't really matter what you export. And I think
that's why I paused. That's why I paused with what I was saying. I was like, well, what does the US have?
We have all sorts of things, all sorts of things. What do we the US have?
What do we
here in Texas? What do we? This is why we have energy independence.
Well,
fracking,
I know,
right?
but still, what do we export if we are the world's largest importer? Because we need to completely redo the industry here. Because,
well, I think,
and I think
there have been a lot of answers to that question over time, right?
Like, what do we have?
What we could people say, oh well, we're sort of exporting our culture, or consuming a lot of Hollywood movies. Hold on.
What we could have is Bitcoin.
I think, the internet itself being a global network is what makes Bitcoin relevant as a global money, right? Is that if the internet were balkanized, and I think I follow and retweet the little Satoshi bot that just has quotes from Satoshi, original quotes from Satoshi. It's a good one. And one of the little Satoshi quotes was something about this balkanization of the internet concept, is that, well, if one nation really didn't want Bitcoin to happen to them, kind of to affect them in any way, then yeah, they could try to completely ring fence their internet or operate on an intranet, which I think is what North Korea does, right? Yeah. They really try to, keep everything out. But what about USB sticks? I mean, or different, there are all sorts of, and satellite data, so Satoshi foresaw, or whoever it was, this leakiness that the internet gets in no matter what kind of draconian, crazy, authoritarian BS any given government would want to do, is that people want to be free. And so the desire to be free and to, I don't know, just live in reality as opposed to some sort of a weird propagandized little cultish nation state, right? Is always going to push against that Orwellian desire to control people. And so I think, we have to be willing to accept, I think around the world, everyone does, that there is going to be more liberty and not less. And that the reason that we feel like there's less right now, particularly after COVID,
I know,
right, is because
they're panicking. They're panicking. They're scrambling.
Well, I mean, if you want to control people, and they're like, no,
they don't have any other option, is what is happening. They are scrambling to maintain what power that they have, because they know that people are standing up. Greece being an example, like I said, people are starving probably. But so just to pull on my theory in parallel to what the U.S. could do, similar to what Russia is doing. Again, pie in the sky idea, but Putin is strengthening the ruble, saying, hey, we know that you want this oil or this soil or this gold, so buy it in rubles. And the U.S. could beat the world to the punch by strengthening the dollar, not only by tightening QT and raising rates, but hey, as everyone does capital flight and rushes to dollars, now take those dollars and say, hey, during this crab walk, the Fed actually bought a shit ton of Bitcoin. You want this Bitcoin? Everyone should buy. You want this Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Pay us in dollars.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well,
like Putin did with oil and gold, pay us in rubles. When the world wants Bitcoin, yes, you're gonna mine Bitcoin where you can get the cheapest energy, which arguably is Russia. They have the marginal price to mine to drill oil. They probably have the cheapest place in the world to mine Bitcoin. So this is like a race now between Russia and US, like a new Cold War, if you will. But again, maybe. But if the US beats Russia to the punch, and I'm not like a Russia hawk or anything, I just zoom out and see what's happening geopolitically and the incentives of people's actions.
Yeah.
But it would make sense, I think, when you have companies like Exxon. It wasn't like a huge story or anything, but they are dabbling into mining Bitcoin. And
right,
what better strategy than to beat the world to the punch on Bitcoin when you have a tightening hawkish Fed trying to preserve the credibility of the dollar in treasuries, than to get a head start and get as much fucking Bitcoin as you can. And then, hey, world, you want this? You want to buy some? We'll sell it to you. Give us dollars.
I mean, maybe I'm just too stupid to wrap my head around some of these sorts of maneuvers with currency wars, but to me, it just seems like, I don't know. If you can create the dollars out of thin air, then, or the rubles or any of the fiats, then
They don't need to.
right,
Though.
I know, but it just seems stupid. Like the thing, the idea of, okay, I want gold in exchange for this stuff, like makes sense in my head, right? But as soon as they're like, oh, go pay us in dollars, pay us in ruble, I mean, or whatever, this
people are
fiat
selling
mindset.
Because people are selling what currencies they have because they're trash, and they're buying. They're selling their euros for rubles. They're selling their euros for dollars.
But if you're saying the currency is trash, I'm asking you, why is it trash? And the answer is always bad currency management.
Yeah.
So if the currency were managed in a way where that fiat were defined by some fixed convertibility, right? Where you take something, it could be something else. It could be, hey, $100 equals exactly 1 barrel of oil, and then they try to fudge that or something.
Sure,
but that you could have an oil convertibility window if you really wanted to. But it's freely trading to some, of course, then gets manipulated by OPEC or whatever, or now the OPEC plus. But my point is that if your chart looks like a step function because it's literally pegged, that's going to create stability artificially, I'll grant you, but that creates a type of stability when you're actually then trying to have something be used as the money in lots of places all over the world. So
that's my point.
Right. This idea that it's this runaway freight train, we just have to get into these currency wars and these this very unpeaceful geopolitics.
This is how the Fed wins.
Me.
This is how the Fed wins the currency war. It's my point.
Nobody wins that. Just like nobody wins a nuclear war. Nobody wins. Everybody loses. It's just a lot of stupid. That's what I'm trying to say. It's just a lot of stupid.
But you see where I'm coming from,
You could peg the
right?
dollar today to the SAT. You could do it today.
Okay.
Just by an executive order. Not that I'm a fan of executive orders, but you could do it today. You could say, we're defanging the Federal Reserve. We're empowering the U.S. Treasury
No.
to peg the dollar to the Satoshi.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
The Fed stays in. No.
Okay.
This whole conversation was the Fed's doing what it's doing right now to gain credibility. Yes, right? We came to that conclusion.
Well, because they're on autopilot. Yeah, they don't know the real way to gain credibility is already right in front of them. They're on autopilot. They think this is the only way to gain credibility. Is hurt a lot of people by raising rates. Yeah.
No.
Okay. You tell me.
They already see. Okay, so the answer is in front of them, like you said. That's Bitcoin.
Well,
right.
It would be a really good answer. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Maybe they already saw that, and maybe all the things that we've been seeing with tightening and raising rates, whatever, that's just part of the process.
Well, the issue is that the Fed doesn't have to exist. I think that's the big.
I know they think this is the best way for them to keep what power that they have, because just like just like how I know like that sounds stupid because it's going to end up failing because their central planners still at the end of the day, but still, just as in Europe, they are scrambling to keep whatever power and control that they have by hurting themselves economically. Maybe the people running the Fed have the same equal amount of hubris, but are taking the opposite approach because they're seeing how effective it is in Russia by strengthening the dollar, by demanding that if you want these commodities, you have to pay in rubles. And so
I don't think it is working for Russia at all. I don't think that's a winning strategy for Russia at all. I look at the whole mess with what Russia's doing and think that it's sad.
Okay, yeah, Russia aside,
dangerous. Yeah,
whatever. Russia aside, no. The point is they are quasi backing their currency by commodities, and if the Fed wants to maintain credibility and gain that trust back,
Mm-hmm.
why not do that with Bitcoin? Is my point.
Well,
and if
right.
all of these strategies that they are doing with raising rates and tightening and just whatever, trying to force a recession, which will turn into a depression, how could those not be stepping stones to ultimately preserve the credibility of the dollar by backing it by the digital commodity that's Bitcoin and running their running their financial system on that, and not Ethereum or Ripple or whatever the EU wants to do.
There are a few things to unpack there, and let me try to segment it, because it makes a lot of sense to think the way that you do, but I just think about it differently.
Okay.
And maybe I'm stupid. I'm probably stupid, but the way that I think about it,
you're no more stupid than me,
is just that we already kind of know, every time Bitcoiners call out the FUD in mainstream media, we already kind of know what this trajectory is that we always say they, right? But that is being put forth to defend the dollar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that if Bitcoin can be called a commodity and not a currency, if you have to pay capital gains on it, if there are lots of affinity scams around it, so the tarnishing of the reputation of this headless peer-to-peer, indestructible peer-to-peer network, right, that will allow everybody to have money rather than go to a third party or an intermediary. So the power of that is coming at them like a tsunami. And this is why I sort of tweet out, hey, all banks have zero use case now, because then there's an absolutely scarce base money supply, and we have websites for crowdfunding. So we don't need any of it anymore. With crowd lending, crowdfunding, all of that stuff is just software.
Right.
And we have a base money supply that's verifiable. So we don't need any of the other stuff, but they can't even conceive of a universe, of a society, of a world in which there's no banks anymore.
They being
the banks.
Just
the banks, just bankers and banks and their central bank and their alliance with government, and the whole currency management structure,
right? But
monetary policy.
But they need to stay relevant by offering Bitcoin products.
Well, see, that's what
JP Morgan has admitted that. They see the writing on the wall.
That's bubble stuff, though.
What are you talking
that's
about?
Jumping on a hype train, right? Is that as long as we're still talking about something that's dollar denominated and you're bubbleizing dollar denominated everything for a while by these ultra low interest rates for a long period of time, you're basically creating a situation where eventually you blame Bitcoin. Eventually, all roads lead to blaming Bitcoin. And that's where we're at. So if the dollar price of a Bitcoin drops and they say, well, this is a commodity that's dropping really hard in dollar value, it must be a bad thing, a scam, and look at all these other ones that went to zero that are in the same category.
Some will say that, but there's a split in government and power.
Right. But it's intentional.
Yes.
To say this because, a lot of people are going to get hurt because of
Terra Luna.
Well, during the .com bust, right? They didn't want to point at the central bank either. They'd be like, oh, it's pets.com, it's Enron, it's all these different things that are, bad companies, bad actors that were boom and bust companies, right? But you have to go back to the systemic reason that there was even a boom in the first place. And so the systemic reason there's a boom is if you have direct planning control over interest rates and over the currency zone such that you can crank a bubble up and then let it collapse at will, and then blame all the people that when the tide went out, they were swimming naked, as Warren Buffett likes to say.
Okay.
So now we're in that moment where the things that are getting destroyed are going to be cryptos, are going to be NFTs, are going to be all of that jazz. And they'll want to then lump it in with Bitcoin.
Okay.
Guilt by association, right?
Okay.
And so all I'm saying is that that's all a fallacy, right? That's all not true. Is that nation states could maintain some modicum of stability and relevance, and even their currency management regimes, as much as I'd like to sunset them, they could maintain relevance by utilizing Bitcoin now and stopping. I mean, literally, the chart could stop.
You're
agreeing with everything.
Yeah, you're not arguing with me.
No, I know. I know. Well, that's good. But I guess we're on the same page. I'm not trying to argue. I'm just, this is the way I see it.
Well, no, but you said like what you said. I mean, you told me that like what I said, there's something like wrong with it because of the way I see it, X. But we never.
I remember that.
But we never came to that X. So what is the X? Like, what is, like, where's the flaw in my thinking? Because I want to know the flaw in my thinking. But
well, the flaw that I was noticing was when you were saying, okay, that the right way is to ask for dollars or something for trade, or
you demand, we're gonna export you Bitcoin. Do you want this shit? Okay, sell your euros for dollars and then pay us in those dollars.
Okay, well, okay, so I don't see Bitcoin as a commodity though. That's the issue.
Well, I don't either. Like
way you don't export Bitcoin, then nobody's exporting Bitcoin. That's not.
No, you don't. No, you don't get it.
Okay.
No, just imagine that the Fed
language.
No, just imagine that the Fed held like X amount of Bitcoin, like a shit ton or whatever.
Oh, in their currency reserves. Yeah.
Yes.
Alongside their gold.
Yes.
Holdings. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you want this, pay us in dollars.
But it's the U.S. It should be the U.S.'s sovereign treasury. Like
no, it should. Yes, we don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But they are going to treat it like a commodity because they're still fucking dumb Keynesians and they think their central planning to strengthen the dollar, it's going to work. That's going to implode. This is just the stepping stone that they are going to take, and then they'll wake up and realize they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Okay.
So this is how they win the currency war, by thinking they're geniuses and saying, hey, we're going to strengthen their dollar by selling you Bitcoin. But for dollars, if you want our Bitcoin, fucking Spain or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's how they win the current currency war without having like hyperinflation. But that will come eventually because people will just lose faith in the dollar because Bitcoin will be more in front of their face and they'll be like, why don't we just be on a Bitcoin standard? That's how ultimately the Fed loses this war. And when I say Fed, I mean like the US version of capitalism as we know, with the decentralized like banking system. So Fed, JP Morgan, Wall Street, all the commercial banks and 12 member banks. So that's where I lump into that is Team Fed. And then Davos is just European Union, WEF, IMF, all that bullshit. So that's that side of the currency war versus Team Fed. Davos versus Team Fed. This is how Team Fed wins the currency war against Europe.
Okay. By
copy pasting the same idea that Putin is using to back the ruble with commodities, oil, soil, gold, whatever. But they are doing this the same thing as Russia is. Again, do you want oil? Pay us in rubles.
Right.
Same thing. Do you want Bitcoin? Pay us in dollars. That's how they win, but it ultimately collapses because people will be like, why the fuck do I have this currency when I just had Bitcoin? And that will be the demise of the Fed.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're describing some dominoes that may or may not fall and in which order they would fall. And I am too. I'm basically saying the reason that hyper Bitcoinization and unit of count is so interesting to me is because really, if you start thinking of the price, like I track with my pin tweet, I track the silver price in sats, denominated in sats for a reason, because unlearning the dollar price of something, you know, most people think, oh, it's $20 an ounce of silver, or $25 or whatever it is. And that's what they think, right? But if I haven't looked at the dollar price in a long time and I'm only looking at the ratio of silver to Bitcoin, then I know it's like, you know, spiked to 74,500 sats per troy ounce because I'm checking it all the time. And most people don't. That's like a very fringe chart to check, you know, that nobody else cares about. But I'm like, I really want to know that ratio because at some point, I think the volatility dampens down between a bunch of different commodities like that and Bitcoin. And to see that dampening happen over time is what I really want to see, because when that happens, then those menus will flip in San Salvador, right? Suddenly you'll see sats as, this many sats for a taco or whatever. So
yeah,
that's what, I think it's really cool to see treasuries buying the dip and stacking sats. But what would be even cooler is for the average person on the street to feel like that's not only money, but it's good, predictable deflationary money that they're happy to save in, and not have to worry about, oh, I only want to save if the interest rate is this, and all this kind of traditional carrot and stick of monetary policy, right?
Yeah.
Do we have an audience? I'm curious. Is that like what's going on?
Last I saw, there was 3 people watching the stream.
Oh my gosh, this has been fun.
Well, this is my first live stream.
That's cool. Oh, that's cool. 3 is cool.
Oh, Mark Goodwin liked it. Let's see
sweet.
Here. If I go. Oh, now we have one person. That one person might be me. But we'll be able to.
I should retweet this. Oh,
yeah,
cool.
dude, you should.
Oh, wow. That's kind of my whole thing.
Anyway, it's almost 8:00. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. I should probably eat.
Now on daylight savings time on the West Coast.
Is this being? Oh wow! So this is embedded in Twitter.
Yeah,
I feel like this is very fractal.
Yeah,
it's a show inside a tweet.
Yeah, dude.
All right, I'm tweeting that.
I mean, there's a shit ton of spaces going on, so who the fuck wants to listen to
ours
bullshit?
is the best for sure. Ours is
obviously
the best, yeah.
I just spewed some fictional alpha of how Bitcoin
pure signal
wins.
Pure signal.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. We should get some food.
Yeah, we should.
I was going full ramble on all my old stuff.
I was feeling like a little like lightheaded myself, and just like, oh fuck,
it's been really hot here.
I don't want to do this episode, but then like I got into it. Like this is why I love this shit, and I was just like,
this has been fun for me.
Yeah, dude, it was great.
Yeah,
I think I came to a thesis, like a new thesis that isn't completely me ripping off someone else. And
what's
like
the thesis? What you already said.
Yeah,
I like it.
I mean, I got really autistic when it came to article that I wrote in Bitcoin Magazine. I'm not really sure how many people read that thing, but it was from Tom Luongo. He spotted when the Fed started tightening in a year ago in June during the FOMC meeting when Powell raised the reverse repo rate 5 bips. Yeah, and it's been moving money ever since then. And so I went into detail, like what is this economic arsenal that the Fed has for as futile as central planning really is? Like, what are these tools that he can use to actually achieve blah, blah, blah. And then like at the end of it, I threw in like, okay, well, the banks are going to have to like be dependent on Bitcoin to stay relevant and make money. But then as the whole Russia-Ukraine thing came about and we see how Putin is not on a gold standard, but like a commodity standard back in ruble. It's like, it was just me spewing these words on this podcast where I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that at some point money breaks down entirely, because if you just don't want to do business with somebody, like basically what sanctions are this sort of international boycotting, right?
Yeah.
So if you just don't want to do something with somebody because you hate them or you think they're disgusting or they have lost any kind of moral, high ground, kind of everybody who's a buyer or seller has the ability to just opt out of a marketplace like that. So you can't ever opt out of politics, but you can definitely opt out of transactions and just sort of be like, no, we're not dealing with you. We hate you for being, an asshole and making war, when you should just negotiate, come to the diplomacy table, Putin, and all of that stuff. So
I am, before this ends, I just want to go to the YouTube, because this is streaming on YouTube. Maybe you have more than one person watching on YouTube.
Yeah, we should
probably not
get some.
Yes, I know you want to go.
No.
I
was just saying
as well.
You said you were hungry. We should figure out dinner. What do you usually like to eat?
That is a good question. We'll figure it out. Hold on. I'm gonna see the live stream. Live. Who's watching? Oh, one. The big one.
It's all good. It's my wife.
Maybe. It's probably
not.
just picking up me and like my cookies or something. Anyway, Alex, this is really awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Me too, Phil. Thanks for doing it. So wait, why are you Boy Named Sue other than the famous song? Is it like Sue, like pseudonym? Because I saw the way you spelled it.
Yeah, because my Twitter handle is Mr. Sue.
But and you don't go under a pseudonym, right? Or
no, it's called a Boy Named Sue with Mr. Sue, but I go as Phil Gibson. I started calling myself Phil Gibson, like last name Gibson, because I did a little short internship part-time at the
you're not Phil Gibson.
Oh no, I 100% am.
Oh, but okay.
I was gonna go.
You're saying that was a pseudonym.
I was gonna use my pseudonym, Mr. Sue, when I did an internship at the Libertarian Institute. And
cool.
And
really
Scott
cool.
Horn is just like, that's stupid. Like, you use like an adult name. I'm like, okay. So yeah.
But your adult name is your real name. Or I guess I'm not meant to know.
What is real?
What's on your birth certificate?
Is this real life?
No, I know, exactly. It's all a simulation, right?
Bitcoin's real.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bitcoin's real. All right. Well, Alex, where can people follow you on Twitter?
I'm at AK Kaufman on Twitter, and I retweet a lot. I've thought of making a t-shirt that I will just,
some people might think
I
you're
retweet,
a bot
therefore I am. I
might...
do it intentionally because you can scroll through. It's like a stream of consciousness. Like you can mute my retweets and then go back to my profile and scroll through, and then it's like, oh wow, these are all the things Alex thought was relevant. Just the same way you go to Matt Drudge Report from way back in the day. It's just like, it's always changing, right?
Alex Kaufman, the Drudge Report of Bitcoin.
And I don't want to go all in on that comparison.
They already think we're all right.
But I'm a news junkie, and I admit that that's kind of like not the bet. And Shinobi was annoyed with me, I think, because I do this thing sometimes where I go into conversations I find interesting, and I don't take a side. I just retweet everybody in the conversation in the reply thread. I'm like, I want to put some more people's eyeballs on this conversation. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't understand what they're talking about. I don't know what this is all about. Some technical thing with Bitcoin, or maybe even a technical thing with the geopolitics or COVID or whatever it is. But I'll retweet everything on there intentionally just to see and I've had people block me. The Wall Street Silver account actually blocked me because they DM'd me and they were like, Wall Street Silver, if you're listening, like, I like silver still and the silver squeeze, like, unblock me, bro. Like, that's not cool. But they blocked me because DM me and it's like, I really don't like your strategy of retweeting me and then getting a bunch of crypto bros in my replies. Like, that's what I have Bitcoiners who follow me. I don't know what he was talking about with crypto bros. He's probably lumping them all together. And he thought that people talking about Bitcoin in the silver replies was annoying spam, and that I was to blame because I had retweeted his stuff to an audience of
Cry
Bitcoiners.
Harder, pussy. What the fuck?
I just thought that was so weird. But yeah, I am pro the silver squeeze, even though I'm a Bitcoin maxi, because I'm like, hey, we should
because you like money.
We should denominate the silver in sats, right? Like that's as maxi as it gets. Is to be like, hey, sats are our unit of account, but obviously silver still exists because it's made of atoms. Like, we need to talk about every commodity, everything for which there's supply and demand. It's just a question.
I don't have a problem with gold.
What's our unit of account? What's our unit of account? If it's the dollar and the dollar's being shitty and it's being managed in a bad way, consistently really bad way.
Yeah.
We need Bitcoin.
We need Bitcoin. Let's end the show right there. Awesome.
And we need food.
We do. Can't buy food with silver though. Maybe during the
eventually.
Civil War. All right. Bye, people.